January 16, 1847. The California Star, Yerba Buena, California. Emigrants in the Mountains. It is probably not generally known to the people that there is now in the California mountains, in a most distressing situation, a party of emigrants from the United States who were prevented from crossing the mountains by an early, heavy fall of snow. The party consists of about 60 persons, men, women, and children. They were almost entirely out of provisions when they reached the foot of the mountain, and, but for the timely succor afforded them by Captain J.A. Sutter, one of the most humane and liberal men in California, they must have all perished in a few days. Captain Sutter, as soon as he ascertained their situation, sent 5 mules loaded with provisions to them. A second party was dispatched with provisions for them, but they found the mountain impassable in consequence of the snow. We hope that our citizens will do something for the relief of these unfortunate people. February 6, 1847. The California Star, Yerba Buena, California. Public meeting. It will be recollected that in a previous number of our paper, we called the attention of our citizens to the situation of a company of unfortunate emigrants now in the California mountains. For the purpose of making their situation more fully known to the people and of adopting measures for their relief, a public meeting was called by the Honorable Washington A. Bartlett, alcalde of the town, on Wednesday evening last. The citizens generally attended, and in a very short time, the sum of $800 was subscribed to purchase provisions, clothing, horses, and mules to bring the emigrants in. Committees were appointed to call on those who could not attend the meeting, and there is no doubt but that $500 or $600 more will be raised. This speaks well for Yerba Buena. February 13, 1847. The California Star, Yerba Buena, California. Update. A company of 20 men left here on Sunday last for the California mountains with provisions, clothing, etc., for the suffering emigrants now there. The citizens of this place subscribed about $1,500 for the relief, which was expended for such articles as the emigrants would be most likely to need. Mr. Greenwood, an old mountaineer, went with the company as pilot. If it is possible to cross the mountains, they will get to the emigrants in time to save them. February 13, 1847. The California Star, Yerba Buena, California. Distressing news. By Captain J.A. Sutter's launch, which arrived here a few days since from Fort Sacramento, we received a letter from a friend at that place containing a most distressing account of the situation of the emigrants in the mountains, who were prevented from crossing them by the snow, and of a party of 11 who attempted to come into the valley on foot. The writer, who is well qualified to judge, is of the opinion that the whole party might have reached the California Valley before the first fall of snow, if the men had exerted themselves as they should have done. Nothing but a contrary and contentious disposition on the part of some of the men belonging to the party prevented them from getting in as soon as any of the first companies. The following particulars we extract from the letter. The company is composed of 23 wagons and is a part of Colonel Russell's company that left the rendezvous on Indian Creek near the Missouri line on the 13th day of May last. They arrived at Fort Bridger in good time, some 2 weeks earlier than the last company on the road. From that point, they took the new road by the south end of the Great Salt Lake, which was then being marked out by some 75 wagons, with Messrs. Hastings and Hedspeth as pilots. They followed on in the train until they were near the Weber River Canyon, and within some 4 or 5 days' travel of the leading wagons, when they stopped and sent on 3 men, Messrs. Reed, Stanton, and Pike, to the first company, which with I was then traveling in company, to request Mr. Hastings to go back and show them the pack trail from the Red Fork of the Weber River to the lake. Mr. H. went back and showed them the trail, and they returned to our company, all of which time we remained in camp waiting for Mr. Hastings to show us the route. They then commenced making the new road over to the lake on the pack trail so as to avoid the Weber River Canyon, and Mr. Reed and others who left the company and came in for assistance informed me that they were 16 days making the road, as the men would not work 1/4 of their time. Had they gone on the road that we had made for them, they would have easily overtaken us before we reached the old road on Mary's River. They were then but some 4 or 5 days' travel behind the first wagons, which were traveling slow on account of being obliged to make an entire new route for several hundred miles through heavy sage and over mountains, and delayed 4 days by the guides hunting out passes in the mountains, and these wagons arrived at the settlement about the 1st of October. Had they gone around the old road, the north end of the Great Salt Lake, they would have been in the 1st of September. After crossing the long drive of 75 miles without water or grass, and suffering much from loss of oxen, they sent on 2 men, Messrs. Stanton and McCutcher. They left the company recruiting on the second long drive of 35 miles, and came into Captain J. A. Sutter's fort and asked for assistance. Captain Sutter, in his usual prompt and generous manner, furnished them with 7 of his best mules and 2 of his favorite Indian vaqueros, and all of the flour and beef that they wanted. Mr. C. S. Stanton, a young gentleman from Syracuse, New York, although he had no interest in the company, took charge of the vaqueros and provisions and returned to the company. Afterwards, Mr. Reed came in almost exhausted from starvation. He was supplied with a still larger number of horses and mules, and all the provisions he could take. He returned as far as the Bear River Valley, and found the snow so deep that he could not get to the company. He cached the provisions at that place and returned. Since that time, the middle of November, we heard nothing of the company, until last week, when a messenger was sent down from Captain William Johnson's settlement with the astounding information that 5 women and 2 men had arrived at that point, entirely naked, their feet frostbitten, and informed him that the company arrived within 3 miles of the small log cabin near Truckey's Lake on the east side of the mountains, and found the snow so deep that they could not travel, and fearing starvation, 16 of the strongest, 11 males and 5 females, agreed to start for the settlement on foot. Scantily clothed and provided with provisions, they commenced that horrid journey over the mountains that Napoleon's fete on the Alps was child's play compared with it. After wandering about a number of days, bewildered in the snow, their provisions gave out, and long hunger made it necessary to resort to that horrid recourse, casting lots to see who should give up life, that their bodies might be used for food for the remainder. But at this time the weaker began to die, which rendered it unnecessary to take life, and as they died, the company went into camp and made meat of the dead bodies of their companions. After traveling 30 days, 7 out of the 16 arrived within 15 miles of Captain Johnson's, the first house of the California settlements. And most singular to relate, all the females that started, 5 women, came in safe, and but 2 of the men, and 1 of them was brought in on the back of an Indian. 9 of the men died, and 7 of them were eaten by their companions. The first person that died was Mr. C. S. Stanton, the young man who so generously returned to the company with Captain Sutter's vaqueros and provisions. His body was left on the snow. The last 2 that died were Captain Sutter's 2 Indian vaqueros, and their bodies were used as food by the 7 that came in. The company left behind numbers 60-odd souls, 10 men, the balance women and children. They are in camp about 100 miles from Johnson's, the first house after leaving the mountains, or 150 from Fort Sacramento. Those who have come in say that Captain Sutter's 7 mules were stolen by the Indians a few days after they reached the company, and that when they left, the company had provisions sufficient to last them until the middle of February. The party that came in were at one time 36 hours in a snowstorm without fire. They had but 3 quilts in the company. I could state several most horrid circumstances connected with this affair, such as one of the women being obliged to eat part of the body of her father and brother. Another saw her husband's heart cooked, etc., which would be more suitable for a hangman's journal than the columns of a family newspaper. I have not had the satisfaction of seeing any one of the party that has arrived, but when I do, I will get more of the particulars and send them to you. As soon as we received the information, we drew up the appeal, of which I enclose you a copy, called a meeting in the armory of the fort, explained the object of the meeting, and solicited the names of all that would go. We were only able to raise 7 here. They started this morning for Johnson's to join the party raised there. Captain J.A. Sutter, in his usual generous manner, ordered his overseer to give this little brave band of men all of the provisions they could carry. They took as much bread, beef, and sugar as they thought they could carry, and started in good spirits on their long and perilous trip. Captain Kern, the commander of the Sacramento district, will go up as far as Johnson's tomorrow to assist in starting the party, and may go as far as the Bear River Valley.